Hello, my name is Jessica Mendoza. I am doing the teacher evaluation cycle video for but the pre-conference portion. Good morning, Mr. Guerrero. I want to begin by thanking you for meeting with me today and for the intentional planning you bring to your instruction. I truly value the opportunity to engage in professional dialogue with you, and I want to emphasize that this pre conference is designed to support reflection, clarity, and shared understanding. My goal is not only to learn about the lesson I will be observing, but also to understand the reasoning behind your instructional choices, the needs of your students, and the outcomes you are hoping to see. When I observe your classroom, I want to be able to view instruction through the lens you intended, rather than through assumptions. In addition, I want to create a space where you feel comfortable speaking honestly about what you are excited about, what you are still refining, and where you may want feedback. Observations can feel stressful, and it's important to me that you know this process is meant to promote growth, not anxiety. This conversation sets the foundation for meaningful feedback later. So I appreciate your openness and professionalism as we begin.
With all of that in mind, I want to thank you for taking the time to explain the purpose of this meeting. I would also like to really appreciate having the opportunity to talk through my lesson before the observation, because it helps me organize my thinking and reflect more deeply on my planning. While I feel confident in the lesson overall, I always find it valuable to explain my reasoning out loud and think about how students might respond in real time. Now, that process often helps me identify areas where I might need to adjust or clarify. It is also important that I also want to be honest in saying that being observed can, and most of the times, make you feel intimidating, even when you know the intent is supportive. Now, having this conversation beforehand makes me feel more prepared and more confident going into the lesson. It also reassures me that the focus is on student learning and professional growth rather than simply checking boxes.
I'm really glad that you shared that with me, and I want you to know that your feelings are completely valid. Teaching is complex work, and inviting someone into your classroom requires trust. That trust is something I take seriously. Believe me, I remember my own teaching days. With that in mind, let's begin by discussing your students, since they are always at the center of instructional decision making. Please describe the class I'll be observing, including the academic strengths, areas of need, and any contextual factors that influence how you plan and deliver instruction.
So overall, this class includes 22 students with a wide range of academic abilities and learning needs. I have a vast majority of students who perform above grade level and others who benefit from enrichment activities that challenge their thinking and push them to apply those skills even more deeply. Now, at the same time, I have students who struggle with reading comprehension and even require explicit instruction, um, improve and perform better through modeling and frequent checks for understanding. And there are also some students, I would say mainly two English language learners, who benefit greatly from visual supports, structured academic language opportunities, and clear routines. Now, beyond academics, there are also behavior and engagement considerations. Most students are motivated and enjoy participating in discussions, but I do have a few students who have difficulty sustaining attention through independent work. Because of this, I try to plan lessons that include clear structure, multiple opportunities for engagement, and consistent expectations. All of these factors play a role in how I approach lesson planning for this class.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. It's evident that you have a strong understanding of your students and that you are intentional about planning with their needs in mind. When you reflect on this group as a whole, what strengths do they bring into the classroom that you intentionally build up upon during instruction?
What I would say is one of the greatest strengths of this group is their willingness to cooperate and engage in discussion. The vast majority of my students are eager to share their ideas and learn from their peers. I work on this and intentionally build on their strength by incorporating partner talk and small group discussions into lessons. Now, I do this because it allows students to process their thinking verbally and gain confidence before working independently. I've also noticed that students are more engaged when they feel their voices are valued. By creating structured opportunities for discussion, I'm able to encourage participation from students who might otherwise be hesitant. This approach not only supports comprehension, but also helps build a positive classroom culture where students feel comfortable taking academic risks.
That emphasis on collaboration and student voice is so important. I'm very glad that you brought it up. As you plan this lesson, are there any particular students or subgroups that you are especially focused on supporting, either academically or even behaviorally?
It's a good question. Now that you mention it, yes, I am particularly focused on my English learners and the students who struggle with sustained attention during independent tasks. Now, for my English learners, it's important that instructions are clear, visuals are available, and academic language is supported. Um, for students who struggle with focus, I want to make sure that the lesson is engaging, expectations are explicit, and that transitions are smooth so we don't lose momentum, and that they are still engaged in one way or another. It is also very important, and I want to make sure that these students feel successful. When students experience repeated frustrations, it can impact their confidence and willingness to engage. My overall goal is to create an environment where all students feel capable and supported throughout every step of the lesson.
Very good. Let's move on to the lesson itself. Please describe the learning objective and explain how it aligns with the grade level standard that you are addressing.
Now, the way that I frame that the learning objective for this lesson is for students to identify the main idea of an informational text, and from here on, support it with relevant details from the text. This objective aligns very well with the grade level ELAR standard that focuses on informational text comprehension and using evidence to support understanding. Now, I chosen this objective because it is a crucial skill that supports reading comprehension across content areas. This objective also builds on prior learning. Students have already practiced identifying details, and this lesson helps them take the next step by connecting those details to the central idea. By focusing on this skill now, I am preparing the students for more complex comprehension tasks later in the unit. In other words, having them build upon with this building block for later.
How did you determine that this was the appropriate objective for students at this point in the unit based on the data you've collected?
Now, the way that I went about this was through formative assessments and informal observations. I noticed that while students could locate details in the text, a vast majority of them struggled to explain how those details connected to the main idea. A lot of times during discussions, I found out that some students would list facts without understanding their significance. And more importantly, this data indicated that students needed explicit instructions and practice in synthesizing information rather than simply identifying. I would say that addressing the skill now allows me to close the gap before moving forward. And it also gives students a stronger foundation for future lessons that require deeper analysis and comprehension.
Great. What will mastery look like by the end of the lesson? And how will students demonstrate that understanding?
In my eyes, mastery will look like for students being able to clearly state the main idea of the text and support it with at least two relevant details. Students will demonstrate this understanding through verbal explanations, either through discussions, through written responses, and most importantly, through independent practice. I will be listening for explanations that show students understand the relationship between details and the main idea, not just surface level recall. I would love to see the students go above and beyond, thinking outside the box, um, any way possible, as I previously stated.
Please walk me through the structure of the lesson from beginning to end, including how you plan to transition between activities. I want to hear more about the lesson.
That's great, and I appreciate that. So the lesson will begin with a brief review of prior learning to activate the student's background knowledge. From here, I will then model how to identify the main idea using a short paragraph displayed on the document camera. During this modeling, I will think aloud so students can hear my reasoning process. We will do this all together. It will be the us part of the activity. After modeling, students will engage in guided practice by working with a partner to apply the skill to a new text. Once I am confident that the students understand expectations, they will transition into independent practice. Throughout the lesson, I will use clear verbal cues and visual reminders to support smooth transitions and maintain engagement. Circulating during independent work will allow me to provide immediate feedback and address misconceptions as they arise.
Very good. How will you ensure that students clearly understand expectations during independent work, particularly those who may struggle with task initiation? We always have those students that they avoid doing the work at times or they get anxiety from the work. How do you plan on targeting those specific students?
And I'm glad that you posed that question to me. Now, before releasing the students, I will review the directions both verbally and visually and ask students to restate expectations in their own words. I found that to be a very useful tool because as long as students understand what they're doing in their own language, it is something that will simplify their work um, vastly. This allows me to check for understanding before they begin. I will also provide an example of a completed response so students know what success looks like. Now, during independent work, I will circulate strategically, prioritizing students who may need additional support. This approach helps ensure that students feel confident and supported while still encouraging independence.
Have you, by any chance, differentiated this lesson to ensure equitable access and engagement for all learners, such as the English language learners, are a special ed population? Have you decided how you want to differentiate the lesson for them?
So yeah, I've incorporated sentence stamps to support academic language. I made sure to use visual supports for English learners. And most importantly, I've also had an extension activity for students to complete the task quickly. As you mentioned, I have a student population of all groups, levels. So these supports are designed to remove barriers to learning while maintaining high expectations for all students. Differentiation is key, and it allows me to meet students where they are while continuing to challenge them appropriately.
Great. How will you monitor student understanding throughout throughout the lesson and use that information to guide instruction?
So I will monitor understanding by listening to partner discussion. Again, partner talk is key. Observing student responses during independent work and collecting exit tickets at the end of the lesson. This data will help me determine whether students need reteaching, additional practice, or are ready to move on to the next concept.
Is there anything specific you would like me to focus on during the observation? This is this is just so that the feedback you receive is most helpful.
Well, now that you mention it, I would appreciate feedback on my questioning strategies and pacing, particularly during independent practice. These are the areas I'm actively working to refine in order to make sure that I service all of my students more appropriately.
Very good. Thank you for your thoughtful reflection and preparation. I do greatly appreciate your time for coming here and for um, being able to prepare this your thought process on our for our students and how you're going to teach them the lesson that you're going to be providing for them. I am looking forward to observing your lesson and continuing this professional dialogue with you even after the lesson. That way we can go over on how we can always improve. There's always going to be room for improvement. And I do want to go ahead and let you know that I am looking forward to your observation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, my name is Jessica Mendoza. This is the post-conference for the teacher evaluation cycle video. Thank you for meeting with me today. First and foremost, Mr. Guerrero, I want to begin by acknowledging the professionalism, openness, and reflective mindset you brought to this entire observation cycle. Inviting someone into your classroom, actually allowing them to observe your instruction, and then engaging in thoughtful dialogue afterward requires trust and a willingness to be vulnerable, and I truly value that. The purpose of today's post conference is not simply to review what occurred during the lesson, but to engage in meaningful reflection around instructional decisions, student learning, and next steps for continued growth. This conversation is intended to be collaborative, supportive, and focused on improvement rather than evaluation. I see this as an opportunity for us to come together and think about how instruction impacts students and how small, intentional adjustments can strengthen outcomes. With that in mind, I would like to begin by hearing your overall reflection on how you felt the lesson went.
Well, overall, I feel that the lesson was successful in many important ways. Among them, and particularly in terms of student engagement and participation during the collaborative portion of the lesson. Now, during partner discussions, students were actively talking about the text. They were also referring details and, most importantly, trying to build on each other's ideas. I noticed a high level of energy and willingness to participate, which tells me that one, students were invested in the learning, but two, at the same time, when students transition into independent work, I noticed that some struggled with understanding expectations and needed additional clarification before they could confidently move forward. Now, a vast majority of students were eventually able to complete the task, and the fact that several needed repeated support made me reflect on whether my modeling, directions, and check for understanding were as clear and intentional as they could have been prior to releasing the students towards their independent activity.
I truly appreciate the honesty and depth of that reflection. The fact that you are actually able to identify both strengths and areas for growth speaks to your professionalism and commitment to continuous improvement. Indeed, how else are we supposed to know in what areas to improve on if we don't reflect on our own actions? Let's talk about more specifically about the learning objective. When you reflect on student outcomes, what specific evidence did you observe, either during the lesson or even after the lesson, that made you feel confident students were meeting or actually progressing towards mastery of the objective?
Now, among the many things that I noticed throughout my lesson, that I heard, that I witnessed, one of the strongest indicators for me was the consistency I observed between what students said during discussions and what they later demonstrated in writing. Now, during partner conversations, I heard a couple of students accurately identifying the main idea and, most importantly, explaining how specific details supported it. Among that, several students were able to clarify or expand on their partner's thinking, which showed me that they had a deeper level of comprehension rather than a surface level recall. On top of that, when I reviewed student work during independent practice, a couple of students, if not, I would say many students, clearly stated the main idea and selected appropriate details to support their responses. Seeing the alignment between verbal explanations and written responses reassured me that students understood the skill we were targeting through these activities.
Very good. That consistency is a powerful indicator of learning, and it does align closely with the evidence I collected during the observation. I want to take time now to intentionally highlight several instructional strengths I observed throughout the lesson because there were many practices that positively impacted student learning. I also recommend that you do take notes from this just for future reference. For first, your learning objective was clearly communicated at the beginning of the lesson and referenced consistently throughout instruction. So you didn't only frame it, but you actually implemented during your instruction. Students knew, they actually knew what they were learning, why it mattered, and what success looked like. So if I were to ask them what they were learning, they're able to justify why they were even learning about it. They even told me a real life example of how they could use it. That clarity created a strong sense of purpose and focus, which supported engagement across the lesson. In addition, student engagement during partner discussions was particularly strong. You intentionally structured those discussions in a way that encouraged participation from all students, not just those who are typically confident speakers. Your use of academic language, supports, prompts, and wait time allowed students to explain their thinking in meaningful ways. I also observed purposeful questioning that required students to justify their responses, make connections, and clarify misunderstandings. Indeed, just like all of us, we do have some misunderstandings, but they were able to clear that out. These practices fostered a learning environment where students felt safe taking academic risks and actively engaging with the content.
So above it all, I want to thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. Every aspect of it helps me improve, to grow, and to learn from it. I've been very intentional about improving clarity and increasing opportunities for student discussion because I've seen how much those strategies influence engagement and comprehension. Doing that, students were able to explain their thinking and importantly, build on one another's ideas is very encouraging. Above it all, I want my classroom to be a place where students feel confident sharing their thinking, even when they're not sure. And most importantly, for my classroom to be a place where discussion is viewed as a tool for learning rather than something to be anxious or worried about.
Great idea. That intentional focus on student voice and academic discourse was evident throughout the lesson and is a significant strength of your practice. As part of this reflection, I also want to discuss an area for growth that emerged during the observation, particularly during independent practice. I noticed that a small group of students appeared unsure of expectations once they began working independently and required additional clarification before they could proceed confidently. This is a very common instructional challenge, especially when students are applying a newly learned skill. I'd like to explore this moment more deeply with you and hear your thoughts on what may have contributed to it and how it might be addressed moving forward.
So overall, I agree with that observation and have been reflecting on it since the lesson. Looking back, I think I may have assumed that students were more ready for independent practice than they actually were. On top of that, while I modeled the skill and reviewed direction, some students may have needed additional support to fully internalize expectations. Providing an extra model example or breaking the task into smaller, more explicit steps could have helped. I also believe that by providing a visual checklist or anchor example, it could have also served as a reference for students once they began to work, which would have reduced confusion and increased confidence as they work through this activity.
Very good. Those reflections are thoughtful and very actionable. Instructional clarity, particularly before independent practice, um, can significantly impact student confidence, engagement, and independence. When expectations are explicit and success criteria are visible, students are better equipped to work productively on their own. I am curious to hear how you might think implementing these supports might influence not only student learning, but also classroom flow and management during independent work.
So given that you bring that up, I do believe these adjustments would help students feel more confident and less anxious about completing tasks independently, which is one of the areas where students struggle the most. When students know exactly what is expected and have a clear example to reference, they are less likely to become frustrated and disengaged. It's also a very useful tool to guide them through examples, through problems that they might otherwise avoid or simply not give a chance to. This will also allow me to spend more time supporting students who need targeted intervention rather than clarifying directions for multiple students. Over time, I think this will lead to greater student independence, improved time on task, and more than anything, a smoother transition between activities.
That insight highlights how instructional decisions influence both learning and classroom climate. Based on our conversation, a clear next step would be strengthening modeling and clarity before independent practice through visual supports, explicit success criteria, and intentional checks for understanding. This builds directly on your existing strengths and aligns well with your instructional goals. I'd like to hear how this plan resonates with you and what type of support would be most beneficial as you work toward refining this area?
Now, taking into account what you just mentioned, and what I previously discussed and observed, I believe that this plan resonates strongly with me. It feels very manageable. I do believe and appreciate that it builds on what is already working rather than requiring a complete change in approach. Um, Support with co-planning would be specifically helpful so that I can be more intentional about structuring, modeling, and transitions. I also believe I would also value feedback after implementing these strategies. And they can be either done through another observation or a coaching conversation so that I can better reflect on their impact and continue to refine my practice and better serve my students in their lessons.
Very good. I like that you're always thinking ahead and how you could always improve more in the future. Not just for you, but for your students, like you had mentioned, it is for their own benefit. I would be more than happy to support you in those ways. We can absolutely plan together and even schedule a follow-up observation or coaching conversation focused specifically on modeling, clarity, and independent practice. I do want to emphasize that your willingness to engage in this level of reflection, identify areas for growth, and actively seek feedback is a significant strength and a clear uh, indicator of effective teaching. Your, just as mentioned earlier, your classroom environment is respectful, engaging, and student centered. And the areas we discussed today are refinements that will further strengthen an already strong foundation. Uh, do you have any other questions that you may have that you've thought about throughout our conversation?
As of right now, I feel, given what we discussed, we covered everything that um, was observed, done, and implemented in my classroom. But again, I would be open to continue the subject and topic down the line with what we discussed and see how we can improve and grow from there.
Thank you once again for coming and taking the time to actually come and sit down with me and to go over your strengths and weaknesses and what your lesson looked like um, through the lens of students and through the lens of administration. Uh, Thank you again for your openness, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to not only me or not only the district, but to the students. I truly value the opportunity to engage in this kind of reflective dialogue with you. And I look forward to continuing to support your growth as an educator and instructional leader on our campus. Very good.
Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for actually taking the time to meet and for the continued dedication you bring to our campus, especially to our students. I truly appreciate the opportunity to reflect on your work and recognize the positive contributions you make each day. You have been a valuable additional to our school community, and your professionalism, strong work ethic, and commitment to student success are evident in your daily practice. The consistency you demonstrate in your role helps support both student learning and the overall effectiveness of our campus. I want to specifically acknowledge your willingness to engage in meaningful reflection and respond positively to feedback. That is great that you're open to any feedback that you get. That way you're able to grow from it and not take it as an insult or become get offended by it. Your openness to professional growth coupled with your ability to implement strategies with fidelity demonstrates a clear commitment to continuous improvement. This mindset is essential not only for personal growth, but also for strengthening our instructional culture as a campus. Your collaboration with colleagues contributes to a supportive professional environment and reinforces our shared vision of high expectations for all students. And when I say all students, I don't only mean the gifted and talented. I don't only mean the either those that already know English, that are non-English learners. I mean everyone. That includes a special ed population, that includes the English learners, that includes those that are low, that are considered low economic status, those that are in high risk of not graduating as well. Additionally, your focus on creating a structured, supportive, and engaging learning environment has a direct impact on student achievement and well being. You consistently demonstrate care for students' academics progress while also maintaining to their social and emotional needs. These efforts align closely with our campus goals and reflect the standards of excellence we strive to uphold as a school community. Your work supports a positive campus climate and helps ensure that students feel supported, challenged, and valued. As you move forward as an educator, I encourage you to continue building on the strong foundation you have established. Maintain the high expectations you set for yourself and your students, and continue seeking opportunities to grow professionally and take on leadership roles when appropriate. Your dedication and commitment position you well for continued success, and your efforts play an important role in advancing our campus initiatives. Please know that your hard work is recognized and appreciated. Your contributions do matter and they do make a meaningful difference in the lives of our students. Remember, we are shaping little ones' minds. No matter the age, they're always being shaped, they're always trying to learn. And also, I do also want to include the overall success of our campus as well. I look forward to continuing to support your professional growth, working alongside you as we pursue our shared goals and celebrating your ongoing accomplishments.